Hi everyone, happy April. It's the 1st of April as I'm sitting down to record this, and Munch, my almost 8-year-old German Shepherd, is right next to my table. He's fast asleep, but you never know. He will spot a bird in the backyard or he'll think he heard someone drive in and he may jump up and start barking at any point. Shouldn't happen, but if it does, you know that he's right here, and I hope you can't hear him snoring as this episode progresses. I want to start this episode with a little secret. I have been craving to sit in a circle with you, to be in Sangha and community, not on Zoom, not a voice in your earbuds every week for years on end, but to actually sit in person with you, to be able to look you in the eye and to laugh together and to yoga together. I do some of my best work in person. And if I'm being honest with you, there is so much that can happen when there is dialogue and an exchange between us. So I really enjoy teaching live and being in person with all of you. And I have an idea. And I hope you take this as seriously as I'm offering it to you. Please open the calendar app on your phone and check these 3 days, June 20th, June 21st, and June 22nd. What are you doing on these 3 days this summer? I'm hosting a summer yoga retreat up in the mountains of Leavenworth. For those of you who don't know, Leavenworth is about 2.5 hours from Seattle. It's this beautiful, breathtaking German theme town that is set against these gorgeous, massive mountains in Washington. You want to Google Leavenworth, Washington right now and see how beautiful this town is. There is so much to do here. And I had suspended this retreat for the past couple of years, and it was usually offered as an Aham Yoga offering, as an extension to my yoga community at the yoga studio because they were asking for it. But the truth is, I want to sit in a circle with heavy duty yoga nerds, and I'm not going to be doing this retreat again because if I'm in a circle, I want to be with yoga teachers. Aham Yoga gets plenty of me every year and every day. And I want to make this an invitation for you to join me this June to sit in a circle and get nerdy about yoga. My aim for this retreat is for it to be like a few days of Yoga Shala. Now, Shala is the Indian name for school, and I have such wonderful memories of my Yoga Shala days when I used to live in India. And I want to recreate some of it for you at this retreat. The agenda for the 3 days is yoga immersion in different ways. It will be split between different themed classes, conversations, community circles, as well as non-yoga activities. And Leavenworth is the perfect backdrop for this immersive experience, especially to my long-term listeners who I have known for so many years, and for all of you who come into my trainings and workshops and master classes, and we meet on Zoom as these little squares. I am really hoping that you will take this invitation as seriously as I am offering it. I have limited spots left, so I'm really hoping that you will be spontaneous. You will listen to this episode and you will write me an email saying you are coming here on June 20th and that we can hug in person and we can laugh and we can share all things yoga together. If you are an out-of-town student, all you need to do is book a flight into Seattle. And then you can either rent a car and drive up to Leavenworth if you're coming with your yoga friends, or you could ask for carpool when you land into Seattle. Usually we have a couple of students who drive up other yoga retreat participants from Aham Yoga from the studio, and you could literally carpool with one of them, get up to Leavenworth, do the retreat, come back into town and head back home. It is so simple, and I'm really offering this to you from my heart. And I hope that you will take it as seriously and sincerely as I am offering it. Okay? So June 20th to June 22nd, all the details are online. I will add it in the podcast description as well as in the show notes. All you need is a yoga mat, a reservation, a few yoga clothes, and you are good to go. And now coming to today's episode, we are getting into a conversation about sequencing. I am creating this series for the podcast that you will notice will come up every now and then. And I'm calling it the Sequencing Support Series because I have so much of structured content available about sequencing in yoga classes that I'm slowly going to start putting them out here for you. On this episode, we are discussing how you can offer the same pose in 5 different ways to create some freshness in your yoga sequence. These 5 principles that I share are time tested and they are easy, and you can implement them literally tomorrow in your yoga classes. So let's get to it.
Hi everyone, I'm Arundhati and you've just tuned in to the Let's Talk Yoga podcast, your ultimate online destination for learning about yoga. Whether you're a seasoned yoga teacher or a curious yoga student, there's something for you here. Let this podcast be your virtual yoga school. We offer insights, inspiration, and loads of nerdy exploration of yoga along the way. But first, who am I? I'm an Indian immigrant yoga teacher living in America for the past decade. I have my own yoga school here in Seattle, and I'm also a Bollywood choreographer, and I've nurtured a thriving yoga community at my studio, as well as a global yoga audience through my courses and this podcast. Through this podcast, I intend to create a space for you, the yoga student and yoga teacher, to learn about yoga in depth. Think of this as your online yoga school, free teacher training coming to you every week. So grab your cup of chai and let's jump in.
Yoga sequencing is a common topic amongst yoga teachers, and it is one of the topics that I personally spend a lot of time in. I don't always get to come on the podcast and talk about yoga sequencing, but it is one of the ways that I have taken Aham Yoga from 0 students to a thriving yoga studio for the past 12 years in the local community. In my early days of teaching yoga and yoga teacher trainings, I was not really taught how to sequence. I wasn't given a framework. I wasn't given structure. So in many ways, I had to find that structure, the framework, figure out what the pitfalls are, and build my students up. And when I look back, I am so glad that I was not taught sequencing, because I had to really be in the moment, observe, and create systems that worked for me. So today, 12 years in, or maybe a little more at this point, I have all this sequencing material, which I hope to share with you so you can take it into your classes and you don't spend time making the same mistakes that I did. On today's episode, I will share 5 different ways you can offer the same yoga pose. This will freshen up your classes, will help keep your students engaged, will help you create more playful yet high value yoga classes, sequencing, and class experiences for yourself and the students. I personally enjoy sequencing. I think it is one of the most fascinating aspects of teaching an asana class, but I want to make this disclaimer. You do not need to use all these 5 principles that I am about to share at the same time or even in the same class. When it comes to sequencing, please adopt a less is more policy. Declutter and audit your current class plan. Often what happens is that we as yoga teachers pack too much into a sequence and we stack too much. And I am so guilty of this. I cannot tell you how guilty I am of this, where I have tried to put so much into a class plan, especially in my early years. It came from a very sincere place, but more isn't better. If you want, I can do another episode sometime where we actually take some of your sequences and we audit it. And I can show you how and why some things need to go, why some things need to stay in real time. But more of that another day, if that's something you are interested to look at, live sequence auditing on the podcast. But for now, let's get into the 5 different ways that you can offer the same yoga pose in your yoga sequence. The first one, and I hope you're making notes because this is going to be good. I want you to make notes. I want you to frame it, have it somewhere where it's visible and front of mind for you. The first principle is change the point of entry. This is one of the easiest things you can do to add a little more freshness to your class sequences. Take a specific posture and change how you enter the pose. Before I elaborate, I want you to only do this once you have done the pose in question a good number of times in your classes and your students have the form set and they know how to do the pose really well and it is steady and effortless. It is only after this that you change the point of entry. For example, if you have done a particular pose, say 10 to 15 times, and your students are the same each week, and they are demonstrating a certain level of skill and mastery in the pose, effortlessness in the pose, then you add this next principle, which is the change the point of entry. Now let's explore what I mean by change the point of entry. Take Warrior 1, Virabhadrasana 1 as your example. Usually, we probably step into Warrior 1 from Adho Mukha Svanasana, downward facing dog. Now, here are 3 other ways you could offer Warrior 1. Firstly, stand at the top of your mat in Tadasana, but with your feet shoulder distance apart. You raise your right leg and you step your right leg back into Virabhadrasana 1, bending the front knee, striking the pose, and it is the front of mat to back entry. Usually, you look at where you are heading in Warrior 1 if you come in through down dog. Whereas when you're going from Tadasana, you are going from a 2-leg stance to a 1-leg stance back into the Warrior 1 stance. So you are working on taking the leg behind you. And it's a different way of entering the pose. You also would exit it the same way and come from the back of the mat to the front of the mat, and it would work on strengthening, but in a different way. Okay? Another way of offering Virabhadrasana 1 is to go to the back end of your mat and then raise the right leg and step forward into this lunging motion that brings you into Warrior 1. Now, this will act as a balance pose, a control pose, where you have to learn to land softly and articulate the landing foot and strike the pose from back to front and resist gravity. So the second way to enter Virabhadrasana 1 would be from the back of the mat. So Tadasana, back of your mat, and then you would step into Virabhadrasana and you would reverse back out of it. So just different ways of playing with spatial awareness, proprioception, landing softly, and so many other subtle skills that are needed in asana practice. A fourth way, and I don't use this very often, but I'm going to share it with you, is where you are facing the long side of the mat. You start in Tadasana, you bend your knees, you step or hop your feet apart, and then you rotate, say, the back foot. In this case, it's your right leg rotating in, left leg turning out, and you turn the hips and the torso to face the narrow side of the mat or the front of the mat and bend the knee. I usually do not offer this at Aham Yoga because you would need a good amount of range in your ankles, knees, and hips and lower back, and it creates a little twisting like motion. Some of my students, I would use this entry, the long side of your mat entry, for all external rotation poses. But for Warrior 1, I would use it only with my very skillful and physically very able in their hips and lower back. I would only use this with some of my very experienced students who have a lot of awareness about the alignment of these poses. It is a rare option, but it is a good option as well. So those are your 4 ways of entering Virabhadrasana 1. And it goes back to this first principle of changing the point of entry once you have established the pose. This principle, changing the point of entry, works well for 3 groups of poses. Do you want to try guessing which 3 groups of yoga poses can this be applied to effortlessly? Firstly, standing poses. There are so many standing poses that you can take and change the point of entry. Standing balances are another fantastic group to explore this. And then there are arm balances. So try for yourself. Pick a pose from one category or from all these categories that I just mentioned and see if you can come up with just one way of changing the point of entry for one pose. Start there and you have started working on this principle. You don't need to know different points of entries for a lot of poses. If you can take a handful and you can have a consistent list that you can work with, then it will become effortless over time. If you end up in my sequencing course that is coming out in October, we will explore this principle in depth, but it is a simple yet powerful way to enhance your experience as a teacher as well as deepen the learning for your students. The second principle here is change the orientation of the pose. This is one of my personal favorite things to do in a yoga asana class when it comes to teaching, to literally flip the plane or orientation of this pose. What I mean by this is you take a yoga pose and you offer it in a different position or a different plane. For example, you can take Parshvakonasana, side angle pose. It can be done kneeling down. It can be done, of course, standing. It can also be done lying down. Another very strong example of this principle is arm balances. Arm balances can be taught lying down, so supine positions. They can be taught seated. And for some arm balances, you can even teach them standing. There are some standing options that I hope to show you sometime. The podcast is not a visual medium, so it does limit me when I share some of these sequencing and asana related things. But if you are in my summer retreat, we can actually explore this in person when we go through asanas and different themes of classes. This principle, changing the orientation of the pose, is a fresh way for your students to learn and understand the pose, and it also takes the load and stress of learning away. Take arm balances, for example. When it is new, there is a good amount of pressure and strain that comes with learning this pose for some students. When you offer an arm balance, seated or lying down, or even at a wall standing, it takes the pressure of balancing away. It actually creates more entry points for students to come into some of these poses. It is a skillful yet fun and engaging way to learn a pose. Okay? The best part of this second principle, changing the orientation of the pose, is that you become a better and more skillful teacher, and you actually are able to build up your students with structure, clarity, and less exertion. And that's a win-win in my books any day. So that's the second principle, change the orientation of the pose. My third principle is maintain a common thread throughout a yoga class. A simple but effective thing to do is to focus on a broad direction, a theme, or a thread for your class. Now, don't fall into those fancy themes that you are taught in yoga teacher training, or you read articles that are published about a list of different themes. Those are fancy traps in many ways. Okay? Think of it as these fancy trailers or reels that you see, but the actual video or movie is disappointing. I want you to just simplify it. Instead of trying to have this elaborate theme in class, just have a structured direction or a common thread throughout a specific class. For example, this comes to mind because I did this last night in my classes at Aham Yoga. The common thread throughout the evening was twisting. And we did twisting in different planes, different orientation, different groups of poses, different capacities of twists, because in a few weeks, I know I want to take them towards certain peak poses. So we had a common thread of twisting. We started with supine twisting, then we moved to tabletop. And while we did other things in these positions and in these planes, we made sure to twist in all these orientations. So from tabletop twisting, we went to standing twisting. From standing twisting, we came down to some seated twisting and eventually ended up exploring a build-up to arm balances that specifically have some twisting component to them. And while, again, I'm saying it's hard to explain this very visual thing of sequencing on the podcast, I'm hoping that this is making sense to you. The intention was to keep the common thread throughout the class so it helps students tap into a deeper, higher value learning experience. The end goal for me as a teacher is always one thing, and that is to make the students successful, to meet them where they are at and to build them up from there. So I highly recommend that you have a common thread that runs throughout your classes. Again, this needs further explanation because there is nuance to this, and I'm hoping that if we meet in the retreat or in the October sequencing course or somewhere where there's a visual element to it, I can explain this in more detail. But just a simple tip for all teachers listening, add a common thread throughout your class. The fourth principle here is what I'm calling the twice over pose. In this approach, I teach the same yoga posture twice. The first time I set it up with physical alignment cues, mainly to lengthen and expand the physical body and the awareness of the student. The second time we enter the same pose and I spotlight the breath and I shift the awareness to the moving nature of the breath. It is one of my most fun things to do with the breath in asana practice because many of you know I am a pranayama nerd and many of you have either done my pranayama teacher training in the past or you are in the current batch. I use this particular principle as a training ground to not only deepen the relationship of a student with their breath and enhance their awareness of it, but also to actually lay down the groundwork for some pranayama later. And this helps so much when you are in deeper pranayama practices. I'm really hoping that this is something you have been introduced to in some capacity in your previous trainings because it has so much value, the twice over pose principle. An example that comes to mind as I'm explaining this is Trikonasana, triangle pose. In the first attempt, we go into triangle and give them a bunch of alignment cues, mainly aim to lengthen and expand them, in short, to create space. The second time we go into the pose and we set it up, I bring their attention to a specific region on their body. And if it's triangle and they are bent over to the side on their right side, I bring attention to the left side of their chest and rib cage. And I ask them to notice the breath on that side because the sides of your lungs have so much potential when it comes to pranayama. 70% of your lungs are on your sides and your back. So I do my best to bring a student's attention here so we can enhance breath work in deeper yoga practices. So my fourth principle here is the twice over pose where we focus on the breath in the second attempt. The fifth principle here is to get skilled with basic prop usage. I really hope that you have a robust understanding of what basic prop usage is like. And I don't want you to think of all yoga props as I'm bringing this up. I want you to think of just simple yoga blocks. Chances are we all have yoga blocks and they are easily available. But to use these simple yoga blocks in different capacities, I'm going to list a few different examples. And I hope you understand them. I've tried to keep the poses I've chosen easy to relate to in this non-visual medium. Let's start with Gomukhasana, cow face pose arms, where your arms are, you're bent at the elbows and you're connecting your arms behind you. That's cow face pose arms. Forget the legs of this pose. I am only focusing on the arms. Now, instead of a strap connecting the two arms, we want to take a yoga block. For example, imagine that you are holding a yoga block in its tall vertical orientation in your right hand. Then you reach it up over your head. So you're reaching in a one-arm Urdhva Hastasana. And then you bend your elbow. And then you take your other arm and reach behind your back and you catch the block. Now, for some of you with longer arms, you will easily be able to grip the block. And then you bring it out to the other side. And then you switch. Now you take the opposite arm up. You bend at the elbows and then you switch. So you're making this infinity symbol almost behind you and you're using the yoga block to connect. And it becomes this very dynamic yet fun way of attempting a warm-up in Gomukhasana arms. Now, if you are long-limbed, it'll be an easy one. If you have shorter arm bones, you might have to drop the block and catch it. And it's also a fun icebreaker in class. Sometimes blocks will go flying around. It makes you laugh. It'll make the students laugh. It helps to make them very present because they have to get hold of that block where they can't see it. And it's just a fresh take on working the arms in Gomukhasana. Similarly, you could take a pose we all do so often, Urdhva Hastasana. And you could place the block in its horizontal orientation between your palms and you can press the block and reach your arms up overhead, and that engages your pecs, your chest, your shoulders and your arm muscles in a certain way where there's a little more of a contraction. And you can play with that in different poses. If I start making a list, you and I will be here for a very long time, but you could use a block in Urdhva Hastasana. Similarly, you could use a block between your inner thighs to engage the adductors. The adductors are your inner thigh muscles, and you could use that to teach internal rotation and can be used in all standing Tadasana poses, can be used in Utkatasana in different ways, and it is for leg strengthening. You can also use the block in seated poses where we work on core strength or oblique strength. You can use them in boat poses. You could use them in several front of the trunk strengthening poses. A few examples that come to mind is, say you are lying down on your back, okay, and you have set up with your knees bent with your feet on the mat. And then you pick your feet up. So now you are lying on your back, your knees are bent, and you have this right angle that you have made with your legs. You take one block and then you reach that block, say with your right arm, behind the legs. So you send it behind the thighs and you reach for it with your left arm. You're making a circle here, if that makes sense. And you take that left arm and you reach it all the way up behind your head, and your right arm grabs it. And then you create that circle very close to the ground. I hope this is making sense. I'm going to say it again. You take the block in your right arm, you lift your head up. So there's that upper trunk contraction. You reach it behind your thighs. The knees and legs ideally shouldn't move if you can help it. And then you reach your left arm, you take the block, transfer it to the other side, reach it over your head. The head is still up, and reach it behind you. And then you start making that circle clockwise and anti-clockwise. I really hope you try it. It is such a core blitz in many ways. It is a fun one. You can also do a single leg version of it, which I'll show you sometime. There's another one you could do where you take the block and you place it against the right knee and the right elbow. So you're lying down, you draw the right knee to the chest, you lift your head up, you place the block as a connection between the right elbow and the right knee. So you're pressing into the block, the leg is pressing into the block, the arm is pressing into the block, and you create that oblique contraction. And then you straighten the other leg and you move in and out of this leg and arm combo. Again, it's very hard to explain this on this non-visual medium. I'm just bringing up some of these things that are coming to my mind, hoping that it is landing for you. And there are so many other fun ways to do related core work and strengthening work. And if you are in my sequencing course in October, we will go through some of these in person. And it will make so much sense. And you will wonder why we haven't done this sooner. Okay. So my fifth and final principle for offering the same pose in a different way is to get skilled with basic prop usage. So there you have it, my friend. My 5 ways to offer the same pose in different ways to your students. A quick recap of these 5 are: first, to change the entry point. Second, to change the orientation of the pose. Third, to maintain a common thread throughout the class. 4 is the twice over pose principle. And 5th is to get skilled with basic prop usage. Please bookmark this episode. I want you to come back to this a few times, take one principle and dig into it deeply. Each of these principles can be a masterclass themselves. A lot of sequencing is you spending time in the trenches, quite literally in the process, and really understanding how to do this in your own yoga practice before you take it to class. I do have a sequencing course coming up in October. I will start talking about it later this summer, but the waitlist is in the podcast description. If you want to come into a live session online and learn all these principles in depth, and then so many more. There's a structure, there's a blueprint that I have ready and waiting for you. But that's about it from me today. The retreat is June 20th to June 22nd. I am sincerely hoping that you will make it to sit in a circle with me in person. But that's it for today. Thank you for your time, your energy, your sincerity and curiosity towards yoga. The newsletter just went out for April. I hope you got to see that as well. I will be back here next week with a guest and a conversation. Until then, enjoy your practice. Take care. Bye-bye.